The Endow Audio 7, Bravura 7. This is by far the strangest speaker that I have reviewed. And it's one that rarely do I end a review with like, you need to hear it to understand it. But that's how this review is going to wind up being. You need to hear it to understand it. But I will do my best to talk about some of the things that I heard. And then I'm going to walk you through some of the data to show you just how different this speaker is and why. This is a very unique speaker. It is practically omnidirectional from about 20 hertz to 6 kilohertz, where all of a sudden it's like somebody just took a knife and chopped it and said, okay, now you're going to beam directly forward at about plus or minus 20 degrees to the side and about plus or minus 10 degrees up and down. So when I say it's omnidirectional, just for those of you who don't know, omnidirectional means a speaker that radiates the same in the front as it does to the sides and to the rear. And that really means that as you walk around the speaker, you wouldn't hear anything different. And that holds true for this speaker from about the lowest frequency to about the mid-high frequency transition of around 6 kilohertz, where the tweeter takes over. The front of the speaker features a 7-inch mid-bass driver. The top of the speaker, as you can see, has a waveguide. And as it spins around to the back, you'll see the top also has a bunch of mid-range around the circumference of the waveguide. Below that waveguide is the 7-inch passive radiator as well. But getting back to the top, those mid-ranges, which are 9 of them, they radiate omnidirectionally up to about 6 kilohertz, where that tweeter takes over it. Now, I have tested 150, maybe more speakers at this point, and I have seen thousands of speakers. I really and truly don't think that I have ever seen a speaker that behaves just like this speaker does. So how do they sound? Well, let's just go ahead and say right now that the soundstage is very, very open and spacious. Now that certainly comes from the speaker being omnidirectional, but it's only that way until you get to the high frequencies, where all of a sudden everything is just super narrow and super precise. At one point, I actually got up from my seat to kind of tilt the speakers around, because I always play around with aiming. And as I was getting up out of my seat and walking over to the speaker, I noticed that something sounded a little bit different. You know, obviously it should sound different because now you're totally above the speaker. But when I came back down and sat into my seat, I realized just how dramatic the shift is at such a minute level. Now, most dome tweeter speakers that are on a flat baffle or even some waveguide designs, they're not dramatic in timbre or overall tonality in the high frequency until you get pretty far above the tweeter level. Let's say about 40, 50, maybe even 60 degrees above the tweeter level. So you're talking multiple feet standing above that tweeter. But with this particular speaker, as soon as you move, I'm talking a couple inches, that can mean all the difference in the world with having high frequency and having no high frequency. That's how narrow the radiation pattern is to the side and vertically on this particular speaker, which ultimately means that if you do demo these speakers or you buy these speakers, you will absolutely need to make sure that your ears are dead on with that tweeter, because if they are more than about 10 degrees above or below, you're not going to hear nothing. Now, back to the soundstage attributes, that's kind of cool. I've demoed and listened to other speakers that are omnidirectional in nature, but they don't have that clear, distinct drop between omnidirectional to very narrowing, beaming pattern like this particular speaker does. But in the context of that omnidirectional sound, what you get is a soundstage that is very, very broad. And it is also diffuse, and that's one of the negative tradebacks of a omnidirectional type speaker. The mid-range to me was too high in level. For me, I think really what this boils down to is that big horn on the top of the speaker. Because it's so narrow, there's not enough energy sent to the room above and to the sides. That's important because what you hear in your seated position is not just the direct sound from the speaker, but it's the sound from the speaker and the reflections off the side wall, the floor, and the ceiling. So up into about 6 kilohertz, this speaker is radiating out into the room and it's illuminating every wall. It's illuminating the wall behind you. It's illuminating the wall in front of you, the side walls, the floor, and the ceiling very evenly. But when that horn takes over and that tweeter is stuck in that waveguide and it's really, really tightly focused, that isn't radiated into the room the same as the mid-range and the lower frequencies are, which creates a very dull kind of dip in the high frequency sound. And it's really interesting. The good thing is it's not offensive, but I certainly missed it in my listening sessions. The mid bass was quite snappy. It had some good solid punch, and I think it extended down into about 50 or so hertz in my room, which it did well. But the problem was just that the mid-range level was just too high overall. So songs that had vocals tended to stand out more in the vocals, but maybe not so much in the kick drum or the synth guitar, things like that. Vocal details in the higher frequencies, air, cymbal crashes, those things were relatively non-existent compared to the mid-range. Now, I'm not going to say that this speaker is good or bad. Honestly, I think it's one of those speakers that needs to be heard. Would I own the speaker? Personally, I would not. It's not my cup of tea. But I think if you had the chance to hear it, you really need to, because some of the things it does with the soundstage are really, really cool, and you really may enjoy it. I do hope that Endow will take this review to heart because, hey, they loaned me the speaker to review. I was not paid, nothing of that sort. I don't get to keep these. I'm sending them right back. I've got a month to review them. So they're going to see this review the same times that everybody else sees the review. This is going to be news to them as well. And my hope is that maybe they'll consider adjusting the mid-range level and not so much focus on just the on-axis response, but also consider the effects of the room as you have that omnidirectional mid-range, but that very tightly focused tweeter. Now, this may be a sound that they were going after. I don't know. I haven't talked to them about it yet. And some of you may wonder why I don't do that. I just don't. I tend to not contact the manufacturer unless I feel like something is broken in the design. Based on some of the data that Endow has on their own website, my data aligns with that. So I don't feel this design is, quote, broken. I think it's doing exactly what they want it to do. And I would be curious to understand why they chose to design the speaker the way they did. And if they email me and let me know, I will make sure to append my review with their quote. Compression on the speaker is actually quite high, and it's more than I wanted it to be, but that really is due to the mid-range. Now, there are 9 mid-range drivers on this speaker. You would think that because there's 9 of them, the sensitivity would be increased and you might not have the distortion and compression that you might otherwise have when you have a 3, 4, 5-inch mid-range driver in a 3-way system. Unfortunately, though, that's just not the case. These 1.5-inch drivers just aren't able to provide you the kind of output at lower frequencies that you need. Given that there's 9 of these guys, I wouldn't have had expected the compression to be quite as high as it is. Having said that, the compression at the 96 dB level still isn't quite that bad. It's just when you hit that 102 dB level that, yeah, things change. And for those of you who are thinking 102 dB at 1 meter is way too loud, just remember you're not listening 1 meter away. At 4 meters in a room for a pair of speakers, that 102 dB works out to be about 92 to 93 dB for most rooms. And it's not that you're listening to that level on average, it's that you're listening to a lower level and you want to have the dynamic range for that speaker to hit those certain dynamic peaks of the material that you're listening to. And keep in mind that there is a lot of source material, especially from the music that I listen to, that is easily in the teens of decibels for dynamic range. So having said all that, let's go ahead and look at some of the data, and I think you're going to be really intrigued by some of the things I see. First up, we have the CEA 2034 data. Black line is the on-axis response, and you can see that the average sensitivity for this speaker is about 81 to 82 dB. The on-axis response is relatively smooth. Well, let me back up. The on-axis response is relatively linear, but there are certainly some diffraction type elements going on through here. And then the high frequency, there is some sort of, I don't know if this is a breakup of the tweeter itself, or if this is some kind of diffraction effect from the tweeter in the waveguide. I'm not able to discern what that is, but there is a peaking of about 7 to 8 dB or so, give or take, above the mean SPL. The bass extends to about 50 hertz of an F3. And then the other thing that I really want to pay attention to, look at the directivity. Now, most directivity responses will show a speaker that is forward firing as it increases in frequency. And that would be indicated by a positive value. So if you take this dashed line, anything above that dashed line would be a positive, and anything below that gray dashed line right here would be a negative directivity. The passive radiator is negative, it's in the back. As you increase to the front 7-inch woofer, the directivity increases in value, but then it goes negative. Well, the reason it goes negative is because my reference point is at the very front of the horn. So the mid-ranges are physically behind that location. Therefore, you have a negative DI. But notice when you get to 6 kilohertz, how quickly the directivity increases. It's because of that tweeter in the waveguide. So just a summary, I measured at about 81 dB sensitivity, F3 of 50 hertz, and an F10 of 36 hertz. And the tweeter, like I said, is very, very directional. We'll see a little bit more about that in a second. Now here is the estimated in-room response, which is gathered by using the Klippel near-field scanner spin data. It's a culmination of all the data that you just saw using 44% of the on-axis response, 44% of the early reflections, and then 12% of the sound power. And this is used to give you an idea of how the speaker might sound tonally in your room. And in my experience, it is a very, very great indicator, especially above about 500 to 600 hertz, where the room has less impact than it does in the lower frequencies. Now, generally what you want is a smooth trending line, either flat or downward sloping or something. How that trend is, that can be up to you. I would say that I want a downward sloping line because that means the speaker is going to sound not bright, and relative in level, the low bass, mid-range, and tweeter are all going to sound roughly the same, and it's going to be more of a neutral sounding speaker. But if I draw a trend line through here, you can see that really is not the case. The mid-range, okay, if I tilt this trend line up, yeah, but notice how the bass is lower in level than the mid-range, and then you certainly have this big old dip right through here. Now, this big old dip is what I was talking about earlier. This is because there's no sidewall reflection and there's no ceiling and floor reflection from the tweeter due to the waveguide. This down here, I'm not really sure what's going on there. I think most of this is going to have to do with the narrowing of the directivity of the mid-woofer, and then the multiple mid-ranges come in right here, and they're firing everywhere in the room, all over to the side of the floor and the ceiling and just everywhere in the room. So you get a lot of reflections that are adding SPL to the original response that is directly on axis. And what you wind up with is a very mid-range heavy speaker. And in my experience, this data really does a good job of matching exactly what I heard in both my living room and my home theater room. Now, for what it's worth, I actually found that my home theater room was not the ideal placement for the speaker. That home theater room is very, very dead, if you will. There's a lot of acoustic treatment. My living room is a much more lively room, even though it does have carpet and the sidewalls are placed pretty far away. It's just not treated like a typical home theater room would be. So, having said all of that, I actually found that in my living room, the speaker did better. The high frequencies that were there weren't absorbed quite as much in the living room as they were in the home theater room, which gave it a little bit more of a neutral sound character. But I'm talking a very minute difference, again, because the horn is so narrow. So here we go with the horizontal radiation pattern. And generally what I'm looking for is where's the red? But in this case, what we're paying attention to is just where's the energy. So let's talk about the yellow, the orange, and the red. Well, the yellow and the orange are all around this speaker, just like we expected, until you get to about 6 kilohertz. Now see where this all of a sudden stops. You don't have any energy sent out into the room except for directly in front above 6 kilohertz, and it's about plus or minus 20 degrees wide. Very interesting. Again, due to that very long waveguide horn. But what does it look like vertically? Very similar story. Vertically, speaker is radiating pretty much omnidirectionally from low to high frequency until you get to about 6 kilohertz, where right through here, and then all of a sudden it flattens out and you're below even 10 degrees up and down. So that means that the speaker is radiating all the way around. So you can stand above it, you can stand below it, whatever, and you're going to hear mostly the same kind of sound up into the high frequency, where all of a sudden, sharp drop, very, very tightly focused high frequency. Here's the distortion at 86 dB 1 meter, and everything looks okay to me here. It's not super low, but it's okay. Now at 96 dB increase in distortion, I'm not really surprised, but I will say that I'm a little bit saddened, I guess, to see that the distortion is pretty high on even the lower end of about 100 hertz. And then here comes the compression. Now, remember earlier I talked about 96 dB, which is in blue, is okay until you get to about 60 hertz or so. That's okay. It's a 7-inch woofer with a passive radiator. I don't expect it to have crazy output levels, and I expect that at some point in the low frequency, the compression is going to increase dramatically, and you're going to need a subwoofer for it if you're listening loudly. But The 102 dB in purple is the part that I was talking about earlier, where the mid-ranges really just kind of start to show signs of giving up. So we can see that the mid-ranges, which take over to about 300 hertz to 6 kilohertz, there's a lot of compression right through here at this high output level. And this again is relative to about 92 to 93 dB at 4 meters away for dynamic range. So if you were listening to the speaker at 76 dB, 4 meters away, you would expect to have a good bit of dynamic range to 92 dB, 4 meters away for the pair. But you're giving up about 2.5 dB, 2 dB or so in dynamic range. So some of that snare that hits, you might not have the top of that. For example, if the snare hits and it peaks all the way up here, 2 dB is going to chop it up right up here. So you're going to miss just a little bit of it. Now, compression is typical for smaller speakers, but I thought it worth pointing out in this particular speaker because you can see where the compression occurs, and it's in the mid-range. These little 1.5 inch mid-ranges, even though there's a lot of them, they still can't take a whole lot of output. 102 dB at 1 meter, 92, 93 dB dynamic range peaking. Keep this in mind depending on how loud you listen to music. The multi-tone distortion, however, is actually pretty good. Even when the speaker's playing full range, it's below about 10%. And 10% is my personal bar for like, yeah, I can definitely hear this. Anywhere from -30 to -20. That's that area where things start to transition from I maybe can hear it to, yeah, I definitely can hear it. So that's why I had this -20 right here. If it's above that, then to me, that's a sign that there is an issue. And with that said, I am done with this review. It is a very intriguing speaker. I do encourage you to listen to it if you have the opportunity. Again, it's not my cup of tea, but hey, you know, it is what it is. If you are new to this channel, please like and subscribe, hit the bell button to get notified of future videos because that really helps me. Also leave a comment because that also helps the YouTube algorithm. If you appreciate what you see here and you dig honest and thorough technical reviews, then please consider joining my Patreon. That helps me out to keep things going. You know, sometimes I need to buy a speaker or sometimes I need to buy lunch, and just, you know, that extra motivation from patrons is nice to have. Also, no, that's actually it. I appreciate you watching this video and I will talk to you later. Take care. Peace.